I'll make sure that.
Hi, Marianne.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Marty. Hi,
Hi.
Nick. We're
Long
gonna miss
time no
you.
see. So you all know that Nick has a new job.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
is our last meeting with him.
Yeah.
we're gonna miss you, Nick.
Oh, you guys have Callie. You're in great hands on the other end. But if you need anything from BCRC, you know how to give me a call.
All right. So we're
Right,
still
we got
expecting
somebody.
Steph and Garrett, maybe Alex too.
Yeah, Steph,
We
I just got
need
off the phone
you.
with Steph and she said that she was just about to sign on.
Okay, they're right on cue. Wow.
What about
Um,
Jenny? Is she coming or?
I hope so. I think so. I mean, I'm not
Where's
sure.
Steph?
Hello, hello. Sorry,
Yay!
Hey,
after all
Steph.
that, I had a hard time getting on. Pathetic. Hi, Bill.
How you doing, Stephanie?
Oh my gosh, Joni and Marianne and Marty, Karen,
Yes.
oh, and Garrett Knox are also going to be, you know, beaming in soon.
I'm only here today because I was talking with Stephanie on the phone today, and I said, "Oh, I'd like to get involved in the energy committee." She said, "Oh, we're meeting tonight."
And I said, well, maybe we'll let you come. I don't know. We're a pretty exclusive bunch.
I mean, are you gonna stay on and everything with them?
It's
I'll make sure that it's good to go again.
Oh, okay.
it's 6:33,
Wait,
so
it's
let's
Nick back
begin the
there. I
meeting.
didn't even see him. Hi, Nick. I can barely see him back there.
This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Arlington Energy Committee. We are going to get started by asking if there are any additions or deletions to the agenda tonight.
I had a chance to, do you want to?
Joan, Karen has her hand up.
Wrote him down.
Karen?
Joni, I can't remember who. Was it you? I was talking to somebody this past week that said we were going to add an item at the very beginning of the meeting.
Somebody said that.
It's not due unless I write something down.
The only thing that's floating around that I can think of is I think we talked about wanting a MERP update. So I can do that.
Yeah, I think that is it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think I also was saying that I'd like to hear from Nick about his plans, especially because Nick, you are our energy coordinator. So since you have big plans, it might be good for us to know that and maybe what we should know about who would fill your position.
I'm happy to talk about that as part of one item if you want to throw a town administrator updates or something like that on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds good. We have minutes from previous meetings, meeting to approve. Yes, Stephanie.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
I second.
That was easy. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna put a slight delay on item A under old business, which is the climate hazard mitigation, because that was something we wanted Garrett on the call for.
There they are, right on cue, actually.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes, I am here.
Hello, is Garrett with you?
Yes, he's coming.
Okay.
There he is.
All right. Well, welcome. The meeting's already underway, and your timing was impeccable because we're on item 3A of the agenda, which is climate hazard mitigation and outreach discussion with Garrett Siegel of the Planning Commission. Take it away.
May I? Joni.
Are you on mute? You're on mute.
I unmuted myself. Have you got me on mute?
Okay, he's talking. Were you talking, Garrett?
I was.
Garrett was talking.
Oh, Garrett was talking.
he
Okay, I
wasn't.
apologize.
Okay, all right.
I'll go back on mute.
Okay, go ahead, Karen. What did you want to say?
I just wanted to give Garrett some background, what we've been talking about lately in his absence. And by the way, welcome back. I hope you're doing great.
Thank you. I'm doing very well.
And I'm hoping Paris was wonderful.
It was great.
Oh, good. I'm glad. We on the Energy Committee are very enthusiastic and feel a strong passion about helping the town of Arlington um, um, provide our citizens with outreach about the hazards that climate change is they are facing from climate change. And so we want to, we have some interesting ideas along those lines. And like I said, a lot of enthusiasm. So we wanted to kind of offer our services to pal up or join up with the Planning Commission in that regard and give you support, advice, help so that we can share the information with the citizens and be able to reach everybody.
Well, that is very nice to hear. I'm trying to figure out what practically that would mean. I mean, is the subject hazard mitigation at the moment, or is the subject the energy plan, just to be clear?
No, those are two different things. The
Yeah.
updating the plan is something we need to do also, but and
Don't
that's
actually. The update of the plan is due to be done in 2028.
right, but at some point we're going to be doing that. So
Yeah.
that is something we need to. That's a separate thing from the hazards that are facing us today, from floods and possible landslides and big storms and all those things. And we feel that, and you guys jump in here, you know, I'm not the only one that feels this way, that the townsfolk are not involved in understanding the threats that they are going to be experiencing and are maybe not as prepared as they should be. And with a buddy system, with all these different ideas that we have about having a travel bag, an emergency bag ready to go, about maybe having an alarm, a siren in town if there is an immediate threat. Because not everybody is on the internet, not everybody even has a telephone. And so we just feel that there is a need for more information to be shared with the public at large about the imminent hazards and threats that will be facing the community. In other words, if the Appalachians, all those towns that were wrecked by landslides, had known that this was coming, I mean, a hurricane is coming and the floods are going to come, but nobody really thought that their houses or their towns were going to slide away. And so, and those sorts of things are happening on a regular basis, unfortunately now, and they will continue to happen and they will continue to get worse. I mean, it's just a scientific fact. So we feel it's important and our duty as members of the Energy Committee to share our knowledge and learn more. We don't know everything. We need to learn more about the different hazards, and we also need to share that knowledge and help people be prepared.
Marty's next.
Basically, one of the ways that we've framed this is that our role we may have ideas about how things can be changed, but really the important thrust of it is education, outreach to the community, making sure that people know where they can go even if it's something like, it gets too hot and they need a cooling center in town, or, if the gym has to be activated because of snowstorm or flood, or if a tornado's coming or whatever. We need to have a plan in place for reasonably possible types of hazards that we may run into in the, years to come. We hope we don't. But, and the other thing that I've actually talked to a couple of people about, and Karen had mentioned it, and that is because there is such bad communications here in Arlington because of the mountains and cell service and everything, the importance of our, as a town, investing in some kind of a siren system that would reach the full area of Arlington. And I don't know exactly how it would work, but I remember as a kid growing up in a town like that. And, there were, if you heard 3 blasts, that meant something. And if it was, in fact, that was the way they got the volunteer fire people to the right location. They would actually, there was a code, that was a sound code. So there's a lot of things that we can do without a lot of cost. But the importance is that we begin to think about what the hazards are and then come up with a plan to actually be able to outreach to people in Arlington.
Alex?
I think that the siren idea is a very interesting idea. We've discussed in the planning commission, for example, during I guess it was the 2021 floods or 2022 floods, I'm forgetting which year. We most recently had a flood that the high school had been open, but not even the people on the planning commission knew that. And it is a problem that we've discussed about how to get information out there. The siren idea is very interesting in that sense. I will say that you guys know I'm on the planning commission, but the hazard mitigation committee is a completely different beast. It has nothing, the only thing that was brought up was, Nick brought it up in a meeting if anyone was interested. And of course I said yes. Subsequently, we've ended up with 2 members of the planning commission, although originally it was just 1, but Marianne Holmes has just joined the planning commission. Well, she's joining tomorrow, I should say.
You're already appointed, it's already real.
I didn't know. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, that was 2 nights ago, sorry.
She's been voted in by the select board, so she's been confirmed. So her first meeting will be tomorrow. And then Michael Murno, who also sits on our committees, perhaps the person who's been on our committee now the longest, who also joined the committee, and his wife Eleanor and Alex joined the committee. The committee was very open to anybody who wanted to join. Nick sits on the committee as well. I just have to point out there's a difference because the question of how information gets disseminated in this town is an interesting one because it's not very good, which I think we all agree on. And I remember we discussed with Nick some ideas of, what's the best way of people knowing that the high school is open in an instance that it is open. And, I think we basically fell back. We have a website. But
and we've worked on a lot of that game planning. And can I just kind of frame this issue so hazard mitigation is handled and natural disasters are handled with 2 documents, the hazard mitigation plan and then the emergency management plan. The hazard mitigation plan is for limiting risk and being prepared. The emergency management plan is if disasters hit, what you do. So what you're talking about is stuff that kind of fits into action items within the hazard mitigation plan is what you're looking at. That what we can work on is we can take this committee's expressed interest here and being involved in the process and write that in as action items that say involve the energy committee in dissemination of information about these types of hazards that are most relevant to energy and climate. And then that can be built into the structure of the town that says that you have a place that is codified, that says one of the committee's jobs is help us disseminate information. That's an integral piece of the emergency management infrastructure. And I'll say that as, not to get ahead of myself, but I did keep the emergency management director hat into the future. So I'll say that with the gravity of it's helpful to have more people who can help disseminate hazard mitigation knowledge and to help people be prepared and encourage people to be prepared. But
We really need a people infrastructure for how we spread information in
and
case of emergency, and that's not well defined at this point.
it's been poorly done forever, and every disaster is going to be a little bit different in its impacts. So how you can be generally prepared, that's what this planning document's for. So by building you into that infrastructure, that's a very natural place to build you guys into the permanent infrastructure of the community and the hazard mitigation planning.
And I think, Garrett and I and Mary Ann have a good knowledge of what we want to do on this committee. We've been rewriting and reviewing section by section, the hazard mitigation plan. It takes a couple weeks for each section. We have 5 different people or 6 people. I can't remember how many. We all discuss and we have to agree, and we can help put in language, which Garrett and I have done, Mary Ann has done, other people have done. It's a very community process. It does actually seem like it's working. I mean, there's, a plan that is being revised, so we can go back and look at that. And we can also, with a lot of different people with different backgrounds, we can add, and things have changed. We're in a different time now with the climate change. And so even if that's not a word you can use anymore, but we know that, there have been things in the past and they will happen again, and other things may happen. My first question when I came to the hazard mitigation meeting, the first meeting, was everything you guys have brought up before, like, how are we going to get the word out? How are we going to deal with crisis? What are we going to do? Get people, if something does happen. And of course, as Nick just said, there's it's slightly to the, it's not exactly the same committee that, this is not, we're doing something that's very useful. And then, but it's not this, it's not exactly the same thing.
This is sort of an overview, just to give you an idea of what we did with the process. Is there was a public meeting, which I know I let everybody know was coming up, and the people who attended, which are basically all the people essentially who've ended up getting involved with the committee, actually attended the meeting, which was nice because it expanded from Nick and I and Dara Zink to a whole bunch of people, which allowed for a lot more opinion, a lot more review, since
Diversity of backgrounds. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't say diversity.
That's exactly.
You should talk. It's not a problem, Marianne. But we sat down in this meeting and we rated every possible thing that we thought could happen, and came up with a score for what was the most worrisome to the least, all things that I think were realistic things to worry about. And then everything that's scored, I believe, over a 4 is being dealt with in the plan. So I could probably share this chart with you. I don't know. Unless, Nick, you might even have it, because I don't know if you can project it. But so the group came out with the most worrisome thing that we have to worry about in town are floods and fluvial erosion. There was a thought of it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense to separate fluvial erosion from floods. Although obviously a lot of some of the fluvial erosion that we see in town is not exclusively caused by flooding. Certainly by the rising and the falling of the river, and places that really haven't been reinforced. The second thing that on our list, the floods and fluvial erosion chapter was the first chapter that we wrote after the general chapter. But this is like, to me, and this is my opinion, Marianne, Alex may have a different opinion. This is kind of like an introduction to a subject and trying to say what we can expect, but it doesn't really have, at least yet, and I'm not sure we will have, like much of a plan. beyond.
There should be some action items at the end for each.
Yeah.
And it should, but it's not gonna be over prescriptive, but it is true of every town that you have action items that are things that you're gonna work on. We'll definitely have things like communication, like items, but also things like, fluvial erosion and encouraging plantings along stream banks, would be a natural type thing and has happened in Arlington for decades. So there are definitely strategies that you put in at the end that say, what tools in our toolbox are we going to get out to potentially address these? And choosing these tools helps reinforce which strategies we're taking to address the problems when there are multiple options.
Yeah, so far we haven't done that.
Yeah, that's at the end.
We're just doing description, like this is the hazard, this is why it's a hazard, here's the history behind it, this is how many times it's happened, yada, yada.
There's a very good, like the state has the same type of plan statewide, and it's a really awesome document to look at. As a person who's generally involved in the state, it's one of the more interesting pieces of government that you can find because they're very clear, concise, and honest about what hazards we actually face and what we really need to do.
So just to go on, we've currently, besides the introductory chapter, finished, or we're just about finished with the third, but we're finished with 3 of the sections. The second most important thing that the group had identified was infectious disease outbreak. And the third was invasive species, which of course deals with both aquatic and terrestrial species and their effects. And it's sort of, it's an introduction to what we have identified. And actually we've added, the nice thing about having a committee of like 7 or 8 people now is that we added certain things that some people had missed into invasive species, for example. Everybody who's joined the committee, I think, has a really good insight and idea. I have to say, having Marianne and Alex has been terrific, just because they look at things differently. Alex is a great researcher. Marianne has so much knowledge to begin with. I'm kind of in awe. We basically, what we've been doing is just going through everything, looking at everything. For me, because I'm a good editor, probably for Alex too, some of it has been rendering it into language that's a little better, because a lot of this is boilerplate. A lot of it has circulated in a lot of emergency plans, which is not a surprise considering that, the BCRC helps everybody develop these plans. And instead of starting with completely new language, there's language out there that you can use. Alex and I, and definitely Marianne and some other people have been trying to clean it up and make it clearer. So the next things that we're going to be dealing with are winter storm, severe cold, and severe heat, which we decided to look at separately, because they really are 2 different things. We're part of the same wheel, but they operate differently. High wind events, which are becoming much more common here, wildfire, and drought. There were a couple of issues that, while identified as a concern, we thought were lower in terms of probability, although still possible, that probably are not going to be in the plan unless there's a cursory note later about other things that were considered, which I think actually would be a good idea, which was landslide and falling rocks, hazardous material spills, which is a significant one, not like a minor, earthquake, which we've all lived through. If you've been around a while, I mean, I've been here. We've owned the house in the area since 2001, and we've had 2 earthquakes here while we were here. They were pretty minor, but they made things fall off the shelves. And then hail was the last thing. And there was a whole sort of way of, we analyzed the probability, the built environment, the risk to the built environment, the risk to people, the risk to the economy, the risk to the natural environment, And then all of that, including probability, were averaged out. And as I said, I think everything over a 4 we're including in the plan.
Marty?
You know, one thing that I'm not hearing, and it's almost makes me choke to say it, but what about civil unrest?
I have no worry about that as the person who's like, I've written a lot of plans in case of civil unrest recently. We were worried, like, there's a plan for our polling places, and every one of these buildings has a civil unrest plan. The sheer fact that we're this far into the country that you're not going to get scale of civil unrest here. You may in a larger town, and if I were St. Johnsbury, or if I were the town of Bennington, maybe I would want to have something just in case. But those places are big enough to have police departments of their own that you can furnish in civil unrest.
Well,
But
You haven't watched enough Armageddon.
I have not watched enough Armageddon movies. I will admit that one.
I don't watch them, and I don't even need to in
No,
order
it's-
to imagine some of the possibilities. So, Nick,
No, I appreciate the concern.
but I would adamantly disagree with you that it isn't something that we need to at least have a discussion about.
And it might be that you have some language in your emergency procedures, because whether you can prepare for that or mitigate that hazard in advance with, being prepared, owning stuff maybe is why it is the rest of what we're going into this plan. So you can always have language in your actual emergency response procedures of, in case of civil unrest, you do this. Or in some other manual, like for instance, my continuity of government manual has all kinds of emergencies that aren't emergencies. That might be language of the town has stock language on this. It just doesn't live here. It should, but they should have a plan. They should always have a plan.
Stephanie?
I just have a couple of things. As I understand it, what you're talking about though mainly is, and for the purposes of the conversation tonight, is about mitigation and planning for natural disasters and for things about climate. I mean, once you get into civil unrest, that there are a whole bunch of things we could get into, but I think the purpose of what we're talking about is really more about those things that are coming down the pipe because of climate change. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay.
I'm not.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'd also, say these are things also that existed before we all got as worried as we justifiably are, in my opinion, about climate change. I mean, a lot of the things I identified have happened before and happened later. I think we're lucky as humans with heat, for example, to be able to adjust a lot better because of our general but not total level of comfort. For example, we can deal with high heat situations in a way that we couldn't deal with them a long time ago. Same for cold. Some of these other things are a little more complicated, certainly. But yes, I think one of the key things that I think for myself, and I would guess for the other two people who are attending this meeting, is to make sure that climate change is mentioned, and that we understand that what is happening and maybe accelerating is due to climate change. At the end of the day, the most important thing is that all of these things are identified and cataloged. But I think it's been important to me, at least, to let's call it what it is and what we see happening.
Yeah. And I guess the second thing I would say is, and I don't mean to be a broken record, but as I listen to all of this, I love all of the ideas. I love the kindness and caring and the thought and the expertise of everybody on this committee. I still continue to scratch my head when we get, as an energy committee, talk about emergency preparedness kits and things, because what I'm concerned about is that really energy committee work? when you've got these two other, you've got your hazard mitigation committee, you've got the planning commission. I am only concerned because we're such a small group. It's not even how small we are, though. It's more that, it's the old thing of if you get too spread out and away from your mission, you're less effective on those things that you must keep your nose focused, your eyes focused on. Which isn't so. What I keep asking myself is, what of all of these great ideas should we be doing? Where's the intersection? Where's the overlap? So, for example, when we talk about carbon sequestration and being able to plant more trees and plant all the things that we've talked about, that makes more sense to me because of our carbon goals. And we're, as an energy community, we're trying to help our town find ways to lower our energy usage and make us more efficient. And we know that that won't get us all the way to those carbon goals, but we know that sequestration by the town and by townspeople does get us a lot closer to those goals. And so I can see where some of those things do fall within our purview, but I'm not sure that, I'm just a little concerned that we get too far away, which isn't to say I don't think those things should be done, but I'm just wondering if it's this committee's job to do those things, if that's the best use of our time, as opposed to the hazard mitigation committee.
And that's a good response, because ultimately the hazard mitigation committee is only going to exist until the plan's done. And you don't want to be duplicating a lot of efforts. It's what it might be is this hazard mitigation committee finishes its work. We have our new plan. That plan's good for another 5 years. Now you know what hazards have been identified. That kind of gives you scope that when the committee has capacity to enter into any space it's not currently involved in, it has a couple of things that are going to be identified in there that are going to become climate relevant. Riparian planting and things like that are about flood mitigation are a climate thing, unquestionable. But yeah, which issue areas you want to get involved with, it gives you a little bit more mandate to pick and choose, rather than giving mandate to absolutely be involved.
How do the plans turn into actions, though? And who does those actions? I guess that's another part of my.
They are meant to guide the government as a whole. So the next administrator should read this plan and consider the implications of this plan on when they're making decisions about the everyday government, where to do highway work, which drainage infrastructure to improve. This should be guiding where those investments are made. So it is on the administrator and the select board that have this plan, that this is their plan. This is the plan they're supposed to be working toward. This is the plan around which their emergency management system is built. And then it will also guide me, the emergency management director, in understanding what has been done. And making sure, but it guides the select board, it guides your emergency management infrastructure. But ultimately it is a guide. It's about knowing what hazard you have and directing investments. So
I want to speak to Stephanie's question about us getting spread too thin. One of the things that I was talking about earlier is that I see our most valuable contribution as being communicators and educators. And we have a role in the Energy Committee in many of the things that we're doing. If we cannot communicate and educate in the community, then we're failing, I believe, in my view. And this other need is also an educational issue, a communications issue. We don't have, as a community, the kind of money where we can have two budgets that are going to be an even effort. We're not that many people that are, that have the energy and the dedication and so on to get things like this done. The idea of having two separate groups going out and saying to people, okay, this is what you do, in case of this emergency or that emergency and so on. you could have one piece of paper or, a card or whatever, that on one side of it has the emergency planning and the other side of it has the things that they can do, related to, carbon sequestration, carbon savings for the town and so on. In other words, it's a way of putting together the mission that we already have as educators, to basically, it isn't, to my mind, that big a stretch, because it is related to climate change. And we're doing all of this carbon sequestration, reducing our carbon emissions and so on because of climate change. So anyway, that's my point. That's it.
It's all good points. I mean, there are things that overlap, which I think Nick and Stephanie have brought up. The ideas, though, are like, for instance, very specifically, what about invasive species along the riverbank? Well, we could tear them all out and get rid of them, or we might look at it and say, well, some of these species are actually good in terms of the flood hazard, they slow down flooding, they're a barrier. So these are things I can't answer. I don't know the answer to these questions. These are questions that all of us and all the other people that are, involved, and other people that have knowledge could help us with. But we're talking about more with hazard mitigation. It's things we can do and think about now so that, maybe hazards won't happen, or if they do, yes, we will be, it's more about how do we go about actually doing concrete things now in our town? It's like the dam, we have, Nick has to, whoever has to make sure the dam is working well, and we don't want to have the dam now, or whatever. I mean, there are things in the town, and, isn't there a dam, Nick?
There is a
Could be
dam
wrong.
down the bottom of town.
Yes,
There is-
I knew it.
Sorry.
I knew it. I was an A student.
I am
No,
old enough to have read the inspection reports of that dam, so.
Right. But this is just an example. I mean, I was just, this is what I'm learning so much. And Marty, you're right. We are educators and we're learning. I've learned so much from being on this committee, and in this hazard mitigation committee as well. And I'm taking notes. I think we all are, in terms of like actions at the end of this plan. There are things that I found, or even just helpful to me as a citizen of Arlington and who has a property. And I want to make sure I'm doing the right things. So this is, that's more of like the hopeful kind of that maybe we're doing good things that will actually prevent hazards.
Yeah, I mean, the worry with all these documents that we have, like this, which is the town plan.
Mhm.
I like go to every meeting with all this stuff these days, which is really funny. Or this, the bylaws is
Put it under his
I
pillow.
do not sleep with it under my pillow. Yeah, not yet. The thing is,
Better than Ambien.
I read it and I go to sleep. No, I mean, truthfully, the thing is like how many people actually get to read these things. I mean, to a certain extent, the town plan, our bylaws, the hazard mitigation plan, and many other plans are really written for town government. Ultimately, I suppose the select board and this very small group of people, a lot of people don't even know these things exist. And I mean, we've sat, in the planning commission trying to figure out, how people are, when are people going to realize they need permits for things? And when I first got here, I didn't know what I needed a permit for. I was kind of oblivious to it. And a lot of people are either oblivious or willfully so.
Can we do a quick shout out to Joni for those marvelous visuals on the website? If anybody goes onto our town website and actually goes to the zoning and planning thing, wow, that was very impressive, Joan. Sorry, Garrett.
even the whole, Joan is our land use administrator and effectively sees the face of enforcement of permits in this town. But because there's nobody who goes out and actually actively looks. I mean, Joan can do that much, and I think she does. But I mean, I see certain things and I'm like, is this, I'll ask Joan, is this a permitted thing? Do we know what is going on? And I told everybody in the planning commission that basically we should be doing that because without it, general ignorance generally wins out until someone stops and says, you can't do that. But sometimes these things ended up built before anyone ever, was firsthand involved. It's pretty difficult. It brings up one other thing which we don't have to spend a lot of time on, which is communication is a big issue, how things get communicated. One thing Nick has pointed out, because we've talked about the idea, for example, of having some sort of letter for when welcoming people to, the town that maybe gives them some idea of some of the local contractors and people who might be able to help them, but also reminding them they need a friggin' permit to do a lot of things. Because otherwise, I don't know how people find out. But there's a big communication gap that, I mean, I don't think that's a planning commission issue. I don't think it's an energy committee issue. I think ultimately the select board probably should have a meeting where we all sit down and talk about the lack of what's the chain of communication in this town? How do we deal with a disaster? So that people actually know that something's going on. Because if we go all dark, there's maybe some people who have have a generator don't go dark while other people go dark, but still, how do things get communicated? It's why actually I find intriguing this idea of the town I grew up in, which is in the suburbs of Long Island. I mean, had basically a warning system which was noise, which we don't even have. I mean, we are very lucky to have our own EMS crews here and to have a really good fire department and a lot of committed people, like all of our members of the Energy Committee, Planning Commission, Select Board. All those people are committed to doing municipal work. So I don't know. I mean, the communication thing is an interesting thing, but yeah, I mean, you can say it's not part of the Energy Committee work, or you could say that, well, it's good that you think about these things because these things maybe need to be brought up in better places.
And there's a place for contingent resources where they don't need to be available every time that there's a disaster, but you need to know that it's there just in case you have a couple of people you can call to help you communicate with it on things. And those kind of informal pieces of the resilience puzzle are a big deal when a disaster strikes, and you know that every disaster is going to be a little bit different, and you never know where you're going to need someone. And certainly there's 100 to 150 people who keep this government running on an everyday basis in this town. And that's a lot of communication among 100 plus people. So, but certainly that's why we planned this. So,
I really like the idea. I'm sorry.
Can I just want to add anecdotally, we bought our land last year in Arlington and went through all the proper permitting, et cetera. And communication was absolutely not an issue. Joan was delightful in letting us know what we ought to do and what we ought not to do. And so we didn't have any problems with communication at all.
But you knew to ask, yeah.
We knew, and I'm also like the person who gets an Act 250 permit because I want to be able to sleep good at night. So
you know what
yes,
Act 250 is.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, when I moved here, I didn't know.
I'm not here. I'm just that was previously, but yes.
No, great. I'm glad. And then we have people that, blatantly, build something where they know they shouldn't be building it. And, they act like, well, I didn't know. And there was one person I finally said to him, I said, this is like you getting stopped by a cop for going 80 in a 40 zone and saying, I didn't know. Right. Everybody knows that, if you're building something, you usually need a permit. That's true across the country. So
you're lucky you're in Vermont that you don't need building permits as well as zoning permits.
I mean, and inspections and yeah, that's for sure. Well, I really, I do love the idea of that welcome letter, Garrett. And I was thinking that as a part of that, as we put our plans together, that may be, a good way of having a communication with, everybody in Arlington, kind of putting out a once for all kind of a letter saying, here's some information for you. If you need a permit, you do this, and, in case of emergency, whatever our plans are that, everybody in Arlington should be aware of, and, that could be a good way of communicating it. And then as we get new people in town, that we would, send out, basically the same letter welcoming them,
Yeah.
Really good
I
video.
think the idea, sorry, Steph, I think the idea had been to see if it could be handed out when people register their properties by the town clerk.
Mhm.
Nick has pointed out that there's a real high level of paper from the town going from people's mailbox right into the garbage
Well,
without
true.
being opened up. And there's he's brought up that there's a certain, unintentional wastefulness in trying to reach people by mail these days. Which always brings up, what is the best way to contact the entirety of this town? I mean, even looking at something that I think is as exceptional as the town meeting, and then realize how many people showed up.
Yeah.
And you look at, I think there were maybe 120 people who
Mhm.
showed up at
Yeah.
a town of 2,000 people. I think one of the problems is that it really should not be on a Monday,
Yes.
Right.
be on a Sunday.
That was conveniently discussed like 48 hours ago in this room, so.
Oh, good.
Look forward to
Good,
the
because
discussion on that one.
that makes it easier to have a representative of a family, if not both parents.
I think it's going to need to be a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah, it is.
I think there needs to be a group that sits down and figures this out, and because I can think of several things. Not one of them is going to be the thing that catches everybody, but we do have so many different avenues, and then ultimately there is some trickle. It can't, because it's obviously not just the new people who come to town. There are people who've been here for many, many, many generations who are probably feeling like, well, I know enough people in this town that it's going to be fine. We've all helped each other over the years. We know what to do, but the world is changing, and the nature of the disasters and the magnitude is changing. And so I think there might be a false sense of security too. I mean, I love that people feel that way, but I also think that could be a problem. And so, I can imagine that when there's the I think it's a postcard now, I'm not sure, that goes out to everybody saying we no longer
Yes,
mail.
the town meeting postcard.
Right, so that could be something that says, you could certainly send out whatever the thing is to everybody that way, but you could also say, you can pick these up at the town meeting, they'll be at the town hall, you can mail them, you can then put them on front porch form, you can put them on what's happening in Arlington. So some of these are not governmental routes, but they're, obviously send them home with every school child. Have it at the library, keep advertising it over and over again. So it's going to have to be a multi-pronged approach.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I think one of the points you just made about people saying, oh, it'll be okay. I know a lot of people. I can think of 2 or 3 times on our road, Burwell Road, where we have been totally isolated. And if there had been a fire, if there had been a heart attack, forget it. There was absolutely zero way that, well, maybe a helicopter, but in one of them was a snowstorm where Burwell Road, I think we had a tree down and deep snow that was, blocking the road. And then the other time was during Irene. We were an island, like a lot of other parts of Arlington were islands. And, there was no getting in and out. But, I think this last year with taking care of Al and thinking back, like the snowstorms, the idea of not being able to get an ambulance through if you needed it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something probably beyond what we should be talking about now. But the other thing is, neighbor to neighbor, community, local, so that people where they're actually located have other people they can reach out to, because we're lucky on our road. We've got a couple of doctors, so we get a lot of good resources, but that doesn't exist everywhere. So there are things like that that are back of the mind, not front of this conversation, but yeah, we gotta keep that part of it in mind too.
Joni, just in summary, I think if I may, the Energy Committee, on behalf of the Energy Committee and our enthusiasm for getting involved in climate-related hazard mitigation and preparedness is for outreach. And so that's what we've said all along in our conversations in the past. And I think that is where our strength lies, and that is where our enthusiasm lies. And so when the emergency hazard, whatever the name of the committee is, I apologize, Garrett, and
Hazard Mitigation Committee.
perfect. When you guys get your job done and you're ready to share it with the world, maybe, come to us and ask for our help, because we are happy to do that. We obviously love to talk, and we love to talk to people, and we are not shy. None of us is shy. And so we could, even I can see us taking roads and going door to door if that's what it takes. But we need to come up with a clear message, and we would look to you for that. And so we wanted to express to you, and that was the whole point of having this on our agenda, our enthusiasm for outreach and to reach out to our citizens and make them aware of the threats, the real imminent threats that are going to come face them due to climate chaos, or whatever you want to call it, and what our town has that can help them, whether or not it's a government or it's neighbor to neighbor, buddy system, whatever. And so that is what I think, in summary, what we wanted to accomplish as having this on the agenda. And I can tell you, we really, really, really appreciate your work.
Thank you. I mean, when we founded this committee, we were all, we wanted to, drive some smart things in the town, which I think we've done a really, really good job at. But the other thing we've always talked about is wanting to be able to do outreach, wanting to be able to inform people about things they can do to their homes, for example, to be better prepared, better insulated. It's always been something that we talked about from the beginning, was how we do outreach. And what's great is that not only are we passionate about outreach on subjects that are really, energy committee matters, but it sounds like we all want to do outreach for everything. And that's good, because I think, end of the day, it's probably, I don't know if the 100 people who are in the town who we count on, we're certainly some of those people. But I mean, ultimately, I think it comes down to Nick being able to know who he can contact to help get information out. And clearly there has to be in my view, a little more of a system, and maybe sort of a warning system for how people know things that are going on. But it's good to know that we're all willing to do stuff outside of just energy, outside of just planning, and get involved. And that's important.
Great. Okay.
Awesome.
We're done with commenting on this topic, right? Next topic is the update on the energy section, which we're not going to probably tackle until closer to 2028. Karen?
I spoke to the BCRC about that, and so I've been communicating. I think we've all been communicating with Carl Buckholt. The concern is that our existing energy plan has in it that as a town we should show a preference for biomass, wood burning fuel systems for heating. And that is wrong based on what we know nowadays. And it's amazing in such a short period of time that we're much more knowledgeable than we were as a group of people who is interested in reducing the impacts of carbon emissions on climate change. So I learned from the BCRC, if we do anything about updating or having an amendment to our energy plan section of the town plan to eliminate that, that would trigger automatically a revision to the entire town plan because the existing town plan is out of state compliance. Now, we don't have to do that as a town until 2028. So she recommended, because it's too expensive, the town of Manchester recently hired the BCRC to rewrite their plan because it was due this year. So it was okay, but it's crazy expensive. It's several $1,000s.
You're gonna want to put in for a municipal planning grant for that, and
Well,
that's
just a second, Nick, if I could just finish what I'm saying. Okay, sorry. But so obviously that is not a possibility and it's not likely. And so what she suggested is that at this point that we make a recommendation to the select board or the planning commission or whatever is the proper link, I mean, the proper chain of command, that on behalf of the Arlington Energy Committee, we strongly recommend that you not recommend or put preference for these types of fuels based on the information that we knew in the past. The information in the current is now changed. So we just need to ask them to disregard. I think it goes through the planning commission to disregard that. In other words, don't recommend that we have a new biofuel system set up for the high school or the town or the new fire station or the new whatever. And so we need to come up with some sort of language. And now it's your turn, Nick. Sorry, I just wanted to finish and say what
I don't appreciate that. I'm sorry for interrupting you. But yeah, it is. There will be an opportunity for the town to apply for money from the state to revise the whole town plan as a whole at some point in the next couple of years. I'll obviously be on the other side of that, probably be the one doing that project. So in any case, that's a good idea. You guys should absolutely draft a letter to the planning commission that says, this is when you revise the town plan, this is the language we want. Probably look through the entire town plan and see if there's other language you think is unquestionably relevant to your efforts as well. It's not a bad idea. If you're going to send a letter, make sure it captures everything that you can capture. So the books are back here. You have your two members of this committee on that committee, and we can go from there. But that's a great idea. And that's a great practice of when this committee finds matters of mutual concern, sending a letter that says this is a great idea, even though it's not our job, is never a bad idea. It helps them think about what they need when they're revising it. So that's easy enough. We look forward to seeing it. And then hopefully I look forward to writing that language in 2 years and getting it implemented.
Yeah, I'll note that when you think about it, the energy plan is actually probably going to have to be it has to by the term in 2028, it has to have been written. So it's actually probably going to be rewritten. The town plan is probably going to be written sooner than you think. It's 2025, and we all know how quickly time goes, but it also takes time to write, which means that it has to be opened up, with enough time for it to actually to be finished by the time it has to be, there has to be a new plan. One thing I noted the other night, or the other night being last month, in the planning commission is, obviously I noticed that the Manchester energy plan was written by the energy plan in Manchester was written by the Energy Committee. And in our town, based on our bylaws, the planning commission is supposed to be responsible for doing this. But it seems to me that when we redo the energy plan, which is what I noted, we probably should put together a group that includes both members of the energy committee and the planning commission and work on that chapter as a group.
I
And
agree, Garrett. I just want to make one quick correction. It's not
Sure.
that the Energy Committee in Manchester wrote the town plan. They just took that section and they combed through that part about, about the recommended fuels and that part. And they're like, wait, this doesn't make sense. And so Carl let the select board know that they were going to be working on this and then making a recommendation. So he gave them a heads up like at least a month in advance, and they did this. And then when it went through, it was fairly straightforward. But they didn't do the whole town plan. They just did that section.
well, I mean, the thing is, when we do redo the town plan, obviously anybody who's interested in participating in that is going to be welcome. But obviously, I think the energy plan needs to be worked on by a group of planning commission and energy committee members. Some of us wear double hats anyway.
Well, you bring up a good point because we need to be involved. We weren't involved with MERP at all, and that doesn't make any sense. I mean, we're the Energy Committee. We've been here since 2018. It just doesn't make any sense that we weren't at the table. So I want to make sure that we are involved with that part. We probably need to make a motion to have a subcommittee anyway, Karen.
Which we would do. I mean, we would definitely do that and either set up a committee or do a joint sort of everybody together. I have to just point out that the energy plan exists because state law basically said if you had an energy plan, it is probably a simplification, and Nick will correct me, but
No, you're right.
the state law required us to add an energy chapter into our town plan and it was all about one thing, which was siting of solar and wind projects. If the town was going to have the ability to participate in those kind of hearings and have standing, they had to have an energy plan in their town plan. So what happened, our town plan was, let's see, I guess it came in 2020, if I'm correct. We had to basically write a plan, and it was mostly based on language that was provided to us from the BCRC from other plans. What I think happens is this was everybody had to do this to remain standing. I can't remember what date it was by, but I knew we were making sure that it existed by the date required. What happens next, I think, is that an energy plan gets to be more nuanced as the statutory language that needs to be there, but obviously then we can add the concerns of actually us, the citizens of the town, and what we're concerned about. And obviously, the Energy Committee has a lot of thoughts on energy, and we've passed so much good information back and forth. And it doesn't make sense to do an energy chapter without the Energy Committee, if you ask me.
No.
Karen,
Karen,
it's a reference.
Karen,
I'd like to make a motion, please.
sure.
I move that the Arlington Energy Committee draft a letter that will be addressed to the Planning Commission and copy to the Select Board
Should be.
about the our updated recommendations in terms of energy types in opposition. No, that's not the right word either.
Recommendation.
To change the recommendations of
Yep.
the energy plan that's in the town plan. Boy, I should have
That's
composed.
good enough. You're good.
You hear a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So let's have that on the agenda for next month, okay?
And who's going to draft this letter?
It shouldn't be Joan. It's the one person it shouldn't be.
I think
Or
we
it
need
really
to,
shouldn't be
I think
Mary
we
Ann.
need to work on it. How many pages is the energy section?
Not very.
Do you know offhand, is it like 5 or 3?
5.
You're gonna check this out and girl grab one.
I'm checking for you. Nick, you don't have to leave. I have it right in front of me.
He sleeps with it, remember?
Yeah.
All right, so the energy chapter. Where is it? 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 I'm looking for it. It is in here.
Or
It starts on page 84 and it finishes, and the next chapter starts on page 105. So it's
Oh,
actually,
my.
Say it
I
again.
recommend you take a look at it. You can download this off the town website, no problem.
Garrett
I
took
have
it.
it and I can email it to everybody right now.
Okay.
I believe he said 84 to 105.
Yep.
That's what he said.
Only pages. What page is boilerplate? So who's drafting this letter?
Wait a second. First of all, can we all, can it be that all of us need to read this? Our homework is to read it all, and then maybe we, what's the next step? That we come back and discuss it at our next meeting, or or do we
I'll
already have-
volunteer to draft the letter. So that's my homework. I'll take that on. As I said, I wasn't taking on a lot of stuff, but this is one I can handle, I think. So I'll do that.
So Marty, you're gonna wait, are we all going to read it? Or are you just gonna, I mean, are we all
Well,
going to?
What I could do is to come up with a draft and send it, let's see, I guess it can be sent individually. I can be sent a blind carbon copy type of situation to everybody. And then it can, how do we go from there? I would guess as a draft, that would be, the draft would go out to everybody and then we
have them send that
discuss
directly
it.
back to you.
Oh, yeah, an answer back to me. That would be the thing. Yeah.
And then you stick on the edits.
I think to draft immediately before people actually get together and talk about what sticks out. I think you should have a discussion before you draft.
I
Is the
agree,
first
I agree.
thing.
This is not
The
an
other
urgent
thing,
matter at all, so you should
No.
take your time.
Yep. The other thing which I would suggest, because we just dealt with this situation in planning commission, is that for a bunch of months we've been trying to figure out how do we put together a list of what needs to be changed in our bylaws when we cannot actively have conversations by 4 people or more, because that suggests a quorum and improper conversation that goes forth. So one thing that we did just last month is we actually started a subcommittee that was allowed to, that everybody could write comments about what was wrong with the bylaws, but we wanted to have the ability to have a master document of all the things that each of us had identified that we could change around, that we could pass around. And the only way to do that was to have a group of 3 people. So one thing that is a consideration for the Energy Committee would be, if you want to look at the energy plan specifically and want to be able to have a master document that puts everything together, so when you get to the point of drafting your letter, our letter, I should say, you have everything in one place, is that I would suggest you consider 3 people saying, okay, we're the people who are going to pass a master document back and forth. And anyone who has, who's found things that they don't think they think needs to be changed can go ahead and send it to any one of those 3 people who can put it into the document. The only way we can do that without spurring, illegal conversations is to have a small group that is basically a subcommittee.
May I ask also if we can use Dropbox instead of Google Docs, because my Google Docs is hacked and I can't get in there.
I'm sure we can make arrangements, and Sebastian, who's, I think, leading all this effort, is very attuned to that.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
um,
Sorry to be a pain.
no, these doesn't matter.
Well, so let me ask then, we have this particular idea of a subcommittee, or, I'm used to doing this kind of thing from the perspective of the editorial work that I do on academic papers. And so what the process that I would follow, because this is comfortable for me, would be to sit there and read the entire thing, mark it up, and then, make my changes. And I can do it in such a way so that anyone reading it can see where the changes have been made. In other words, it's the same technique that I'd use if I were editing work that was coming in to me on an, somebody else's manuscript. It's really a pretty easy system to follow.
So do you use Word and just do
You
revision
could do it
tracking?
you can do it in Word, yeah.
So just revision tracking, basically.
Yeah. So and that way, the original document can be there, and then in Word, as a matter of fact, you can also do those little bubble things. I think that's in Word.
Comments.
Over to the side or whatever. I personally think if I were going to be the one that's, going to take this on, it's easier for me to work independently than to try to get 2 or 3 people. Even if we were just to take the one thing and then let everybody else tear that apart.
Right, well, the details of how we do this, we'll talk about maybe at the next meeting, because we decided we're all gonna read this and then discuss it.
Yes, good point.
Perfect.
Okay.
We've got a lot more other stuff to talk about, so good.
Yeah, we do.
Okay,
Not
good.
much time to talk.
Yeah, we're running out of time. So the next item is the Carbon Hero proposal discussion. Karen?
Did you guys look at my suggestions? Again, this is the same kind of document we were just talking about, a draft document for us to use this. The whole idea was that this would be a PowerPoint that Joni volunteered to put together. And so so she volunteered to do the PowerPoint, and I volunteered to start the draft. This is a working document about the concept of the Carbon Hero program that we talked about last couple of meetings. And have you guys looked at it? Do you have any suggestions or additions or changes? Marty sent me one that I included in there, the language about the
It had,
of the poor
I don't remember.
what we need to do is to I changed it on, here's my Google Docs. I didn't save it and put it in anyway. The one I'm looking at is not the one that I made the change in. Sorry, Marty. I changed it on Google Docs. I should have, but bottom line is it's a brief proposal summarizing why we need sequestration to get to zero, because we can't get to zero without sequestration because of the diesel trucks. There's nothing we can do about the diesel trucks at this stage of the technology. And so we need more acreage of sequestered carbon to offset the diesel trucks. And so just as a background for you, Bill, the town is going to be carbon neutral by 2027. And according to our citizens voted for that. So we have been working on it, and we came up with the idea that we would have citizen landowners volunteer to pledge a portion of their trees, their forested, I can't say the words lands, but their trees to offset our the needs that we have. They would be designated as carbon heroes, and our other alternate member of our committee, Marianne Carlson, not here tonight, but she is a landowner who is very offered to do hers. And there are several people who would volunteer with no compensation except for the good feeling that they have that they're helping their town to be carbon zero. And so I was hoping that you guys could help make this proposal better. And so please help me with ideas.
I
Here.
just have a question. I was wondering as I remember, and I've been out of it the last year with my own stuff going on, but when we first were calculating everything, I know we were trying to calculate the public lands and what kind of sequestration that does. Do we have any way of calculating what standing forest land that currently exists actually how much that sequesters on its own? And is there any way to calculate that?
It's already been calculated and it's in the spreadsheet.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
so,
all like
yeah,
check box.
Vermont foresters have come up with an average. It's so variable based on age of the trees and density and species that they've come up with an average acre of Vermont forest. And so they have a number, that's the number we've been using in our spreadsheet.
but on top of that, we were gonna make it 1.5 times
Yes, we were
that
gonna,
amount. I mean, like, like instead of 1 acre, we want 1.5 acres to equal that, just as kind of a hedge on it to make sure that, we're definitely meeting the goal.
right, so like, I think we calculated we need another 60 acres, maybe something on that order. But we would try to get 120 acres just to cover it and make sure that we're doing the carbon drawdown. Yeah.
And the idea is that people would pledge not to cut their trees, but one of the reasons for, seeking more acreage than we would need is that we never know. There could be forest fire, there could be a blowdown, there could be, an economic need that a family has where, they had to cut trees. So if we have an excess, we've got a buffer and, the idea is that these people will be designated part of the Arlington Carbon Heroes, and we put a little something in the town report about it every year. We report on who those carbon heroes are.
And do you have a list of the people who have agreed to pledge their land? And also, is there a list of people who haven't been reached yet?
Yeah, it's just the trees, not the land. We gotta be really careful about
Yeah.
nobody's giving
Yeah.
land away. It's
Right.
just the trees on the land.
So
And this
we're
is
still
civil,
talking
a civil,
about-
not a legal agreement.
We're still talking about this to present to the select board, so we don't have a list.
Okay.
Okay,
If you
so
want to be.
I think maybe
I'd love
everybody
to.
should just revisit that draft again, because I think maybe there's a couple people that haven't really looked at it. Alex? Go ahead.
So what I'm trying to figure out is, so you were talking about a number of acreage, what did you say? Because I'm bad with numbers. That the town has of forested land. Is that
90,
89 acres.
How much?
89.
89.
89? And then, but have we calculated how much land is out there that's private? That
Oh,
might, like,
a lot
okay,
more.
there might be a lot of land out there that is just sitting there and no one's ever gonna touch it anyway, there's,
Well,
No,
that's
definitely.
the whole idea,
right.
Alex, is that people
Do
that
we make a
might
plan?
have 100 acres and they're not planning on cutting it would say, okay, I'm going to pledge that my trees will not be cut, and this can go into the Arlington Bank, if you want to call it that, to mitigate or, to offset.
Aren't those forested lands right now, they're sequestering?
They
They're,
are,
Yeah.
they are, but they could be cut tomorrow.
they
And so
could,
what
but
we're-
they're not, but if someone's not, I'm trying to get my head around.
I'm just trying to
I think, can I jump in here?
Yeah.
I think, your issue is, and Joni has expressed this concern, and so all of us have the same concern. We're not making anything any better by this program.
Mhm. Yes.
Right.
You're
I guess
creating a little bit of pressure on the landowners to not cut trees because they made a
Correct.
promise.
And
And
also,
that can
again,
matter.
it's
That's
outreach.
true.
That can
It's
absolutely
all
matter.
outreach. And I
Right.
can tell
Yeah.
you that before we did the study of the forest, before we did our spreadsheet, before we really dug into the meat of the issue, just with our little teeny town operations, we're not talking about community wide, the little teeny town of Arlington, I had no idea. I mean, we've been spending so much effort talking about making town hall better. So not the issue. The issue is the diesel trucks. It's the elephant in the room. And so um, I did not know before we did all this work and did all these walks and all these talks and all these things about forest, old forest, new forest. I mean, I know so much more than I used to know, and I want to share that with other people. And now I feel guilty when you have a bonfire in the backyard, so we're not going to have as many bonfires. Sorry, Jim. I just, these things, it's mostly about outreach. I would love to make a difference also, but I think we make a difference through outreach. And so that's what this is.
That makes sense. So if you want some numbers, we have about 16 acres of woods at the rec park and the yellow barn. And it's 1.3 tons of carbon dioxide sequestered per year for the average Vermont acre of woodland.
Mhm.
But it makes a big dent in our carbon number.
Yes,
You
it
know, that
does.
was a surprise that once we actually put those numbers together, what a big dent it made.
It almost got us to
Yeah,
zero. It's
Yeah,
very
and we
close.
don't need, relatively that much acreage. I mean, consider how many acres of forest there is around us,
Right.
We don't really need a lot of it donated, for this cause, so. One of the things I want to say though is, I think that we should continue to accept ideas, until the next meeting on, this topic and how, maybe how we should position it, and so forth. But the other thing I'd like to get, I mean, I'm thinking about this PowerPoint and, what am I going to do? Right now, it's a few sentences and I'm like, okay, how am I going to turn this into a PowerPoint? So, if anybody has any particular illustrations that they think are, would be really good for it, maybe, somebody want to make up like, a hero sign, a carbon hero, sign, somebody.
Who's our artist?
Stephanie.
Who's our artist on this committee?
Could we possibly do a competition at the high school? I mean,
I'd love that. I
get-
love
get-
that.
Get students involved and we can have a prize to see what, I think would be awesome.
I think that would be good after the select board approves the idea. Not, I think we should get in the car before.
But put it in,
We
put
do
it in
now.
as an
Yeah,
idea. Sorry, I'm talking over. Excuse me.
Go ahead, Gary.
Oh, it would make sense to have that as part of the plan that you're presenting.
Yeah.
We're gonna, if you guys like the idea, well, we have this idea to do a contest and, just to bring in, this whole community involvement thing. I think it's worth mentioning beforehand.
Yep.
And also, I went to the last Arlington Area Alliance meeting and did share with everybody. There was a great attendance, all the organizations from Arlington and the areas around, in the fantastic new meeting room over in the next door to you where you are right now. The Arlington
Commons.
the Arlington Community House.
Yeah.
They redid this
Yeah, the
room
rear
in the
room.
back that is a fantastic meeting room. Anyway, everybody who was there from all walks of, or all different things, this wonderful group. I did share just briefly about the Carbon Heroes program, and it seemed like everybody was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting."
Oh,
And I was
cool.
glad to hear that because it was just, it was so just. I think that, even Don Keelan next to me was going, "Oh, interesting."
Maybe he plants some trees.
Of course,
He has actually
He
all
has
along the
planted
wall.
some trees.
Yeah.
I have one more question. How long are people pledging for the not
It's-
cutting of the trees?
10
10
years
years?
that they can pull out of it.
Oh, 10 years. Okay.
10 years.
And would the energy committee be the repository for keeping track of that? Okay, good.
And, and the other thing that, we need to make sure of is that they're not already involved in any kind of a conservation effort that,
They're double counting.
yeah, we can't double count, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Um,
if someone has something in current use, or I'm just trying to figure out if someone is in a conservation program, does that necessarily mean that their sitting acres can't be counted?
No, if it's current use, it doesn't usually mean that. You have
Right.
to look it up with the state. The Vermont Land Trust has a considerable portion of their lands already counted as carbon offsetting for state purposes. So it's kind of thorny. So everybody that wants to volunteer there and become a carbon hero for Arlington, they need to do the work to make sure that their carbon sequestration has not already been counted by another agency.
Right. Oh,
It's actually,
just trying to figure out why it would be bad if the state is counting X amount of acres in Arlington as being carbon sequestration. I mean, and we're also counting the same acres because they're achieving the same thing in
it's
this
bad.
town they're doing in the state.
It's bad because it's a lie. The state of
Well,
Vermont.
we're trying to offset our diesel trucks. And the state of Vermont is not concerned about our diesel trucks. Right?
Well, it's mostly okay. So the state of Vermont says the state's carbon footprint is whatever, right? And so then Arlington says our carbon footprint is zero. Well, it's only zero because this forest over here was dedicated, and that's actually part of the same calculation that the state was using. So it's not bad, except it's not true. So we can't both say that these lands are sequestering.
Not true is bad. Okay, let's establish that.
Wait.
It's good.
Lecture some
It's
policy.
bad in a good
We
way.
can all use it. Otherwise, then everybody could use the same plot of land for every single argument.
I mean, people can theoretically sell their sequestration to companies. I didn't think
And
necessarily.
that's the important thing here. This makes it so there's no dishonesty of someone actually like claiming credits for this. This is the most fair way to do it. You have a good strategy.
No double dipping.
Exactly.
Okay. So it is just about 8 o'clock. We've gotten through most of it. So let me just quickly say, under old business D, update on tracking tool. I know I have a couple of people that are looking at the spreadsheet for the purpose of audits. I haven't had any negative feedback, so I'm assuming it's all good. But please keep at it if you're in process. The new business was actually communication with constituents, and I think we kind of covered that under the climate hazard mitigation. And if there's like any specific topic that went with that, because this is just a very general statement, that maybe we can table that for the next agenda if that's okay with everybody.
I put that on there because I didn't speak at the town hall meeting. How do we communicate? Because it was
Okay.
8:30 or something. And
Yeah.
everybody wanted to go home.
Real quick, we added an item to our agenda because we wanted to report on the MERP project.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, now I can give you the quick and dirty what we added to the agenda now if you want.
Yep.
Okay, MERP, we have the two projects. The board retained a architect to work on the permitting of that, and the board set set as well as the state set in the parameters of the program rough priorities. So what is clear in the state program is air sealing and building envelopes work is right at the top, along with like attic insulation. Then heat plant, so heat pumps type work second, and then stuff like windows is what the rough outline of projects is going to be generally across the state. The board prioritized the garage as for among the two projects because the garage is just a sieve in every way. Everything about it is bad, and a number of you have been in it. You're talking like 2 inches of insulation in the attic pitches. So, and a big cavernous empty room that's going to be great for a heat pump. So the architect's going to design up those pieces. There's not a lot to do right now. But I will tell the select board if this project lingers open and they don't have an administrator in a reasonably short amount of time, come talk to you guys if they need some support. They have a architect to support them on this, and he's a really great guy from Bennington, a well-known firm. So we expect that they will successfully design improvements to the heating envelope and the heat plants for both buildings, and there should be just enough money to get those projects done. Whether they replace some windows, well, maybe at the garage, probably not here. Here, they don't want to replace windows on anyway because the historic resource is concerned. The state historic office really didn't like us having the idea of replacing windows here, but that's the historic people. And it was already at the very bottom of the budget list anyway, so we're probably not going to play around with that.
Window dressers.
And these were all windows that we previously put window dressers inserts into, almost all of. So the inserts are paying dividends. There's not a whole lot of value add on replacing some of these windows. So that's where the MERP is. We look like I budgeted as if we're getting the heat pumps installed sometime in the middle of this year. So I hope that this is right at the top of the priority list. We have all of our approvals in place. We're just waiting for the architects and the next administration to get themselves together, make a plan. This plan is not a very complicated plan. It's lay down advanced insulation in the attic and figure out a way to insulate the roof pitch to the garage. So it's and then install a couple of heat pumps, which are now very routine. So that's good. It's a pretty straightforward project that should navigate the transition pretty well. Beyond that, I am the town doesn't have an energy coordinator. We hope that the next administrator is appointed energy coordinator. We expect that they will at least attend the beginnings of, or the majority of your meetings moving forward. We're going to encourage them to do so. But because the select board's administrative capacity is going to be very, very highly reduced in the meantime, they're not taking on any project of choice until the next person's in place. That's going to be at 1 to 2 months, we would imagine. The job is posted. If you have anyone in your life who wants to apply, please have them apply. But the applications have been pouring in the last 24 to 48 hours. We expect to get a lot of applications for this. So yeah, I never thought I'd see 10 to 12 applications overnight. I mean, we're running ads on multiple websites and things like that. So they're advertising it hard. They expect to have someone implemented relatively soon. And then when I'm on the BCRC side, I'll be doing work that's all going to be very climate relevant on the planning. The state planning laws are all very climate friendly and very climate dense, compact, low carbon development is good, more or less across the board. That's what state law is now. So I'll be involved in every town in the county, more or less, on that kind of stuff. So yeah, look forward to seeing what you guys do. And I'll still be floating around town in case you need.
Great.
So excellent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you for all you've done to help us.
No,
And
good
to
luck.
help us.
Good luck, Nick.
We
Thank
wish
you.
We really wish you the best.
Yeah, so last item is upcoming events. Is there anything anybody needs to announce?
I'm sorry, but I just wanted to add one thing. I'm still unclear in my mind, but you all may have gone over this, so I can get an email from somebody later, maybe in the meetings that I missed over, the past year. But what happened to the attic work in the town building?
That's part of the heating envelope work in the MERP.
So that will also be rolled in. Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
all. Yeah, the town hall heating envelope is attic insulation with R49 bats and then air sealing. which there's gonna be air sealing in the administrator's office and around the clerk's office. Mostly by, yeah, the attic will go from a current R, well, whatever bats are above the ceiling here, but they don't go all the way, like there's a gap there. So it's gonna go to an extra R49 on whatever it is.
And also heat pumps, also heat pumps?
And also heat pumps are scheduled, the architect will be designing out the system.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to get.
No problem.
Okay, so if that's it, do I hear a movement?
Next meeting.
for
I'm
adjourn?
so confused
Yeah.
about our meeting schedule now.
So upcoming event.
Yep, that's not.
First Wednesday of the month is April 2nd.
No,
Next Wednesday.
we couldn't do it. That's why this one got moved. So it'd be more like the beginning of May.
May 7th would be that date. The first date.
So we skip April.
Yeah, April got moved to tonight.
Okay. I
I
said,
thought this was our April meeting effectively.
Yes.
It is.
Okay. We're on the
May 7th.
agenda.
Okay.
Awesome.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Marty? Second?
Never. Hey, Bill, thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you'll come back.
Yeah, thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, who seconded?
Welcome to Arlington,
I'll
Bill.
second.
Okay.
Thanks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Except Stephanie.